Welcome to Monsters Multiclass, your Dungeons & Dragons fix. I'm Kevin Odie.
I'm Jared Bornigal.
And I'm Will Meldon.
This week we're taking a look at a special spooky episode. That was bad.
How do we take a look
I
at
know,
a spooky
yeah.
episode?
It should be spooky special episode, but
Spooky spot. All right, someone else do it. Do it in a vampire voice.
welcome to Monsters in Multiclass.
Do they do welcome or do they do?
Willkommen? Oh, you mean the V or the W?
Yeah.
It's
What do
Wel-
vampires
Welcome.
do?
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to Monsters Multiclass.
Welcome to
Your
Monsters
weekly Dungeons and Dragons fix. Oh God. All right. Welcome to Monsters in Multiclass.
No, see, it's not. Everything's V.
All right, you're right. Too many V's. We got this. Welcome to Monsters in Multiclass, your weekly in Dungeons and Dragons and fix. Bleh.
That was really good.
This isn't going well, is it?
It's a spooky episode. Yeah, that should be abundantly clear at this point. It's Halloween.
So stick around for a few.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you
So are we
wanna
going
mention-
with that? Or are we gonna?
No, do you want to mention what we're actually doing at all? Like, even a little bit? Because there are two semi-coherent things that we'll be going over on today's podcast, which are...
Spooky Multiclass.
And the spooky Boneclaw.
Bleh.
Bleh.
All right. So no more vampire voice. I think we've got our intro out of the way, though.
Sure, Kevin, just fucking edit it in post.
You can fix it in post, right?
Sure.
Oh, and put the spooky piano music in the front, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you need royalty free, you can just use what I just did.
All right. So this week we are going to try our best to put together some sort of spooky multiclass. What that means is nothing. It basically means nothing, but we're going to try our best. I don't have a good way to start this, if you couldn't tell by the intro, but I think where I want to start is what Halloween means to me. No? We don't want to start there?
I think it's about sacrificing cats.
Jeez.
I thought it was about candy.
I don't know, man. That's just what I read on the internet.
Okay, so
We're getting real close to just scrapping this whole episode.
yeah, we're getting real close.
This is a bad start.
We're not there yet, though, so we'll push through. All right, so spooky multiclass. I've got some ideas. Most of them are kind of funny, more than they are spooky, because spooky is really hard to do in D&D.
Yeah. So I'll back up real quick. When you say spooky multiclass, do you mean it's spooky because like inherently the multiclass is spooky? Like
Mhm.
it's like it's so bad it's spooky like wizard sorcerer? Or like it's a spooky character and we're making it and it's only able to really be justified via multiclass.
I think the second one,
All right.
but I do like the idea of like sitting around a campfire and telling like spooky stories, but it's just us like, oh, and then he dipped into sorcerer for only one level and he was already a full caster. But I don't think that's going to play well with the audience.
No.
That's a fairly niche.
That's some niche spook right there. So if we did try to put together a multiclass that was spooky and could only be justified by being a multiclass, what could we do? Because there's some classes that I think definitely lend themselves to the spook factor. Something like the Gloomstalker Ranger,
Mhm.
I think is a great one to say. That's like, ooh, that's like, it's got some spook to it. It's kind of like edgy, and it's all about seeing in the dark and not being seen by things that can see in the dark.
Yeah,
and
being able to turn invisible in the dark. And
Right.
Ambushing people and
It's kind of like, a monster's worst nightmare.
Right.
And then the other side of it is like a necromancer, which just takes every generic spooky thing and kind of puts it into one wizard. Their entire
Right.
thing is raising things from the dead.
And necrotic damage and
Right.
and then warlocks too, just kind of
The
In general,
entirety
they
of the warlock class, except for the celestial, probably.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because people always yell about this on the internet, but the Archfey isn't supposed to be like really pleasant. Everyone's like, oh, it's like a cool elf god. It's like, no, it could be like an evil, mean imp.
Yeah, I mean, fey creatures alone aren't like inherently good.
You remember those
Hags
red
are
caps?
fey. Yeah, red caps are fey
Those
creatures.
things are terrible.
Yeah, the Feywilds are not a good place. I think, what is it, Displacer Beasts came out of the Feywild.
Yeah, that was an accident.
Yeah, I mean,
Cat breeding accident. Like, oops, I screwed up the cats.
so, I mean, what, I don't know, what can we do to make a multi-class spooky? It's really just taking those elements and putting them together.
Right.
So a necromancer gloomstalker.
Mm.
Does it have to be mechanically viable?
Yes, it has to be mechanically viable.
Oh, that's kind of throwing all of our principles out
No,
the
it's
window.
perfect. It's perfect. All right. So you've got the one subclass you're not supposed to use.
Which
Like
one?
the spooky Oathbreaker Paladin,
Oh.
who's perfect for your necromantic ways.
So what, because the Oathbreaker gives you a bunch of stuff about like empowering undead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to roll it. But I was thinking about it because I was playing Warcraft and no, not Warcraft. Warhammer. I was playing Warhammer, and all the necromancers were not like saggy wizards with robes. It was like huge dudes with armor on horses with lances. I was like, oh, I'm evil and I'm on a horse. I was thinking that's way cooler than being the frail necromancer.
Kind of like the Headless Horseman.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that class. And other than like really wasting your time with illusions and maybe like begging your DM to make your firebolt themed as a pumpkin head, there's not a lot you can do there.
That is kind of cool, though.
Yeah,
If
sure.
if
but
I was
it's not
doing-
going to work in the campaign 11 months out of the year.
So I don't think that these are the characters that are going to be used in long-form campaigns by any means. I think this is the type of character where your DM says, "Hey, I want to run a Halloween-themed one-shot," and you're like, "Cool, I'll go ahead and make a Headless Horseman character." I mean, that can work. So, I mean, you're talking about Paladin, Oathbreaker, with some necromancy, and just has some illusion spells to make it look like they don't have a head.
Yeah, it's like, unless you really do wheedle your DM and be like, can I actually be headless? And he's like, no. Come on, man, please. Come on. It's just a one shot. Come on. It's just a one shot. Like, eventually, like, fine. It's an illusion, but it's always on.
Well,
Whatever.
it's just a dwarf wearing too big of armor.
Has to have -1 AC because it needs to be slot cut out of the chest. For him to see.
Totally worth it.
Yes.
Totally worth it. But I mean, there's definitely some things you could do. I remember in our Curse of Strahd game, you were playing a paladin who was not an Oathbreaker. I don't remember what he was, but he had a horse that was it wasn't undead, but it was
No,
like-
it was undead because it died. And then I kept bringing it back with the find sea spell.
Right, and we just kept flavoring it as like he got more and more decrepit. He was like eating like flesh off of the dead enemies. It's like a
That's funny.
spooky skeletal horse, and I think your character's entire thing was that he just ignored that he was an undead horse.
Horse was fine, man.
Is it
Yeah.
irregardless?
Regardless,
Yeah.
the horse.
Come on, irregardless. Is he eating that person's head? He just does that. He thinks it's a pumpkin.
Hey, man, if your horse works, I don't see any reason to change it up. He stopped galloping or whatever. But yeah, that's the other problem with this class is anything that is mounted, you are limiting yourself in usefulness and team playership and all that kind of thing. So, the Headless Horseman could just be like a headless regular dude.
What if you were like a fire ganassi? Because then you've got like the flaming head, and it's like, I don't know, you're kind of going in that direction.
I don't think they have flaming heads, man.
We can make this one have a flaming head. It's a one shot.
You could cast it's called like Eternal Flame or something like that on your helmet
Ooh.
because there's no heat or anything like that. It's just
It's basically a
eternal-
torch.
yeah, with no heat, and
Continual
it's
flame.
permanent.
That's a spooky spell right
Yeah.
there.
So you just wear like a black hood for a helmet, and then put Eternal Flame on it.
Man, that's kind of
Yeah.
spooky.
Yeah, And then you're an Oathbreaker paladin, and to anything that fights a paladin, they're spooky as shit.
Yeah.
You don't know if this hit's gonna hurt really bad or like absolutely terribly fucking bad because they decided to smite with it.
Did the DM properly have that like 7 combats a day, or did he just kind of let it go so the paladin can smite every time, you know?
Right.
We know.
And then if he's multiclassed into the necromancer wizard, knowing that if you get killed, your corpse is probably going to be raised up and used for his nefarious deeds.
Ooh, that is kind of
In
spooky.
addition to nuking all the characters, you have a gigantic army of zombies and skeletons to completely screw up the action economy.
That then get empowered by your mere presence as the Oathbreaker's aura.
I feel like it's really hard. Just the more we describe this, the more I think like that sounds like a really cool villain.
Yes.
You know, and like
yes, it is.
It's really hard to make a character that you would want to play that is, once again, spooky. Because all I'm hearing from that is, man, it would be really cool if, like, for a Halloween one-shot, if you came into a town that's being basically terrorized by this headless horseman paladin who's got a flaming pumpkin head and is raising up his victims from the dead and using them to amass an undead army. That doesn't sound like a heroic PC thing to do.
What are you going to do with all that? Oh, I'm going to go kill a dragon. A bad dragon, right?
I don't know. Whatever dragon I find first.
Just for the sake of accuracy, the spell's continual flame.
Okay.
Flame, but whatever, in case anyone looks it up. But I mean, the evil campaigns are always a thing, especially if you're doing a Halloween one-shot.
Right. But then, who's the antagonist in that case? If you're the evil
the
ones,
devotion paladin.
Bus full of orphans.
the bus full of orphans who is not currently under my enslavement as somebody who wants to kill all these orphans and bring them back to life as zombie slaves.
First off, they didn't find that out until the next campaign.
So you're bringing back Rin, aren't you?
Being an evil character is the best thing in the world, man.
But no, I mean, it does make it kind of tough because, like, to play something spooky, there is this inherent element of evil to it.
No, not necessarily. I mean, what we're describing is so incredibly over the top. It's
Right.
like, it's going to have to be. You can't really, like, play that as, like, no, he's just kind of the misunderstood anti-hero.
Right,
It's like,
right.
no, he literally lit his head on fire and is raising dead townsfolk to go raid other towns.
To amass more dead town
Yeah,
folk.
like, he's not an okay person.
Well, maybe we can just use him for this one quest. It's just a one-shot, guys.
But I think what you're saying has some grain of truth to it, but there is a spectrum of spooky. And if you look at like, say, what creeps you out in a horror movie, like 99 times out of 100, that thing is bad. And like, it doesn't even matter if the good characters are actually technically bad. The thing that's hurting them is always going to be bad. But there's the creepy aspect that is usually just kind of slung at people that aren't actually creepy. They just make you feel weird. You're like, that guy kind of looks like he smells. But you could make a spooky, like, mysterious old one, warlock, and just like act weird. That's one kind of awkward take on the spooky thing. I don't know. The new sorcerer class where you're just covered in slime all the time.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily evil, but it is kind of spooky.
Oh, it definitely is. You've got spooky up and down on that one. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right, and I feel like I'm just getting a flashback to miscellaneous movies where there's just like a jump scare of like a spooky homeless guy. He's not spooky because he's homeless. It's just a spooky situation, and there happens to be a homeless guy.
Oh, this is the richest country in the world. How did this happen?
Right. It's just like that quick, like, oh my gosh, I thought you were like the bad thing trying to get me.
Oh, like Home Alone 2. And I think Home Alone 1. I think that guy was in both. Does anybody remember that?
Macaulay Culkin?
No, not Macaulay Culkin.
Was he not the bad guy in
guy
that?
who shoveled the driveway.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
He wasn't homeless. It was just,
No, he was just spooky in that way where
yeah,
it's
he
like,
went across the street
he's
and ended up
creepy.
being like a nice guy and helped him out.
Right. And that was spooky in like a childlike way.
Are you talking like Mulholland Drive?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, yeah, I don't
Man.
quite remember the entire movie. It's hard to really keep it all in your head, anyways. But there's definitely some sort of scene like that. Like some homeless guy jumps out, and
That guy was like a vine monster.
but yeah, he wasn't really like a homeless guy. It was weird. It's
Well,
a weird movie.
that's how it would actually play out if you were playing a spooky character, where you are the one that everyone's like, what is like up with that guy, and it's like, oh, he's just kind of off, but it's not a big deal. But then, you know, you have tentacles and stuff like the other warlock that came out in the UA recently. That's like basically a tentacle warlock, or you're a goo sorcerer, and it just like slowly comes out more and more that like, no, this guy's really, really creepy.
What's the other one? Shadow Sorcerer, where it has the has the creepy table.
Yeah,
You blinked once last week. That's creepy as hell.
Right.
We always do this in a racial lens where it's like, oh, you're the strange thing that doesn't usually come to town. But that's fine. And that's a fine way to play it. But if you have like a guy who never blinks or his skin is completely cold to the touch, people should be like reacting like, oh, that guy's incredibly off-putting.
Yeah, and he definitely would be. But what would he multi-class with to increase the spookiness?
Oathbreaker Paladin.
Just Oathbreaker Paladin.
That's the only one I thought of. Sorry, guys.
Well, I mean, it's not bad, especially with a sorcerer. Could you imagine a goo sorcerer who is also an Oathbreaker Paladin? You still have the Polurterer, or whatever it's normally called. Sorcidin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorcidin is the official name.
Right.
Polurterer is what,
Is what
we call it. We've hijacked it.
Yeah. So you get your
Polurterer
Polurterer.
2019.
It's not catching on.
It's really not. It died once that episode aired.
So you get your Polurterer, who's an Oathbreaker. So they, of course, had some strong connection that in their past they have turned away from. And now because of that, they get some benefits with undead, which I never really understood. But I guess that's not important. It's supposed to be a villain. And then they're a goo sorcerer because...
I don't remember any of the mechanics of the goo
Yeah, no, just go Shadow Sorcerer.
Yeah, okay, Shadow Sorcerer.
I mean, also then the goo one, great old one, Sorcerer is a UA, which... I mean, I guess this is not like an official multi-class episode.
It's not even the great old one. I literally mean goo, like he's covered in slime.
Yeah, there was the slime sorcerer recently.
Right, but isn't it they got their powers from like an
It's from like the same place, but it's not the guy himself. It's not like Cthulhu. It's like Cthulhu's like mucus.
It was like Jublex. I think it's like one of the possibilities of like how they got their goo.
But it doesn't really come into play because you're a sorcerer. So.
Right. So everyone just forgets that you have a backstory and moves on. Most sorcerers.
All right, yeah, the shadow one works great. You've got dark vision, you got darkness, you got the Hound of Ill Omen.
Yeah. Oh, it's the darkness that you could see in, right?
I don't know.
If you cast it using your sorcery points.
Yeah,
Which
I mean, that's scary. That's spooky.
But that's also super...
It just like lights out in the room.
Yeah.
And it's like...
That's catastrophic if you're a paladin. Because that like doubles your crit chance because you got advantage now.
Oh, yeah.
And every
and
time
like
you close
everyone
a
else
paladin-
knowing that it could still see me. I can't see it.
Right. Which I think it really does make it sound like really good for an evil campaign. Where like your PCs are just terrorizing something.
Right.
I don't even know how to structure an evil campaign, like where to even start with that. I feel like the only thing I can think of is if there's like, I don't know, guilds and such, because otherwise you're just killing civilians and that's just like chaotic evil and that's not really fun. I wouldn't want to be at that table, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
What's today's encounter? It's like 60 villagers, most of them. I'm not rolling initiative. They're just going to try and run. Go for it. See how many you can get.
Yeah, just roll 2d20s and that's how many you killed. Good job. But I'm going to make it dark. All right, yeah, they're terrified and you killed some more. Good job.
Oh, you have 2 attacks and you used them both on a villager even though he was dead? You start hacking them up. Have inspiration. Yeah.
All right, so an actual long-term evil campaign, it's kind of like a mirror to the type of campaign we're running now, where it's an open-world sandbox type campaign.
Right.
We all have characters that we put a backstory to, and they all have their own goal, and the reason why they're out in the world, quote-unquote, adventuring and grouping up. You do the exact same thing, but instead of being the scrappy, rambunctious group and the good-hearted tabaxi and the environmentally friendly furbog and whatnot, everyone's just kind of evil bents. It's like you got driven out of your village because you're a psychopath, and people like kind of put that together that you're the one causing all these issues, and you got ran out of your village, and you realize, all right, I kind of got to hide it a bit. But I mean, ultimately, I want to amass a huge amount of wealth and power, and that is my long-term goal.
Right.
But I'm going to need people to do it with, and then the entire party is like that.
The problem is if you don't have a support structure behind you, and this is why it doesn't work so well with this. Oh, we're a random band of, lawful to neutral evil people, you have no support structure. Like every single town does not want you. They want you gone. And there's only like room for a handful of those subversives in any civilized place.
I wonder, I mean, if the difficulty of it becomes how do you push your motivations without entire cities, rising up and kicking you out in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, well, so it's like you're going to a big city where the usual thing you do if you come across like a criminal organization is you fight against them. They would join up with the criminal organization with maybe the goal of trying to take it over.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it wouldn't so much work in like small little villages of 20 people.
Right.
Yeah, they're just going to kick you out. Or you're going to end up killing them all, and then we're back at that situation again.
Oh, thank goodness it's adventurers. We have a quest. Do you have any evil quests? Sir, we're a simple village. We just need help with our sheep. Killing them? No. We'll be leaving.
I mean, there is still something to the small villages in the sense of, they have a quest for you, and you're like, cool, what does it pay? And they're like, oh, it's just a modest sum. We were really hoping for just like some altruism here. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. And then, maybe they don't pay you just enough. So you teach them a lesson and then you leave the village anyways. That earns you a reputation, to say the least.
Right.
And that legend itself kind of grows. I don't really know the motivations to doing that. Like in real life.
Right. Yeah, that's
I can't relate to putting villages to the torch just for my own personal pleasure. It's not like a thing I've done very often.
Which, I mean,
so that's why it goes back to I would want it to be in a very developed world of large cities and like large populations where you could blend in. That's what you'd have to do to get away with it.
Right.
So yeah, you get involved in the criminal organizations, you start one up. Maybe you're going to small villages to shake them down. You're not going there looking to help them. You're looking to bully them for protection money and hard quotes on protection money,
right,
and crap like that.
Right.
I think actually it's not a bad idea to create, if you can get the party all cohesively thinking, let's just be kind of, what's that word?
Bullies?
Brigands.
Okay.
Brigands.
Okay.
Everyone know what a brigand is? Generally, it's just like the bad guy bandits in the streets. But generally, what it actually means is like former soldiers, when the war was over, they like didn't want to go back to work. So they just chill in the countryside and rob people because they were really good at fighting and they didn't get their spears taken away. So you could just like have like that kind of campaign. It's like, we just finished our war and I don't want to go back to making shoes or bread. I want to shake people down. And then the challenge in that campaign, because they're not going to be gunning for like dragons or vampires or bands of orcs, is going to be like some kind of law enforcement agency that you have to craft to hunt these people down. And that could be a great like quote unquote villain for this campaign.
I think a good example of that is something that everybody in the world has to be familiar with at this point, Red Dead Redemption, where that's like basically the kind of the idea, not so much the setup of like you were all, part of the war or anything, but you are playing a character who is avoiding the law because their ideas are, I want to just avoid law. I hate lawful society, and I just want to do what I want to do without the, watchful eye of the government in any way. And that kind of falls in line there, and I feel like you could put something together there where you're evil to some extent, because yes, you do go into town and steal horses and kill when it's more convenient than talking things out.
Or you press the wrong button.
You press the wrong button.
Oh, that was the knife button.
But that could be some part of it. More like I want to say a cowboy, but that's not really it. It was an outlaw.
Yeah.
Through and through.
Yes. Yeah. Or you go away from the sandbox and you write a more linear railroady campaign. Which is actually, that's a lot of what we played before our current one. And that's fine. And just write it with the intent that the party is evil and they have these grand evil plans where this stuff will happen and they could take advantage and rise to power and rule the kingdom someday.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Out of the Abyss, a campaign that we played, basically being flipped on its head and almost exclusively being like, you're trying to release the demons in a way that benefits you. And then it's like, okay, sweet, we already have this like structured campaign, but now it's evil. And you're in the Underdark where it's already not like, connected.
Nice, yeah.
Right. It's not a nice place by any means. And you can travel from city to city and people aren't going to have talked about other cities as well. It's very disconnected. So I could see if you are going to run a long-term evil campaign, the Underdark would be perfect as that type of place. I think even the world that I'm currently running is very you could go halfway across the world and people aren't going to know of what happened in some big city on the other side.
Right, because it's a very underdeveloped, kind of new...
The frontier
world.
effect.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Which is exactly the plot of Red Dead Redemption. It's
Right
the
back
end of
at
the
it.
frontier effect.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm the last of my kind. Damn railroads ruined everything.
So then you throw on top of that a bard necromancer who's got zombie groupies, and
Or dancing skeletons.
dancing skeletons is probably better than dancing zombies.
Oh, yeah, no, they got
Yeah.
they can do that thing with their arms.
They're much more flexible.
Xylophone ribs.
Yeah.
Xylophone ribs,
That
that's
was a
perfect.
classic.
I say, yeah. Make music while they dance. The joints and bones click together.
Right. Ooh, like taking off your buddy's arms to then play drums.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
That's such great flavor. I love it. I would get so sick of it so quickly.
I think when we had our Bard Wizard episode, that actually came up really briefly,
Right.
and then we just entirely stopped talking about it. I don't know if it's mechanically viable, to be honest. I don't think it is.
Well, there's no real point to it. Like,
Right. There's no actual synergy. It's just flavor.
oh,
It's just pure flavor. It's like, wouldn't it be really cool if I had backup groupies just all the time singing and dancing for me? Well, not singing. It'd be just like, they might have good harmonies if you picked out the right ones.
it depends on the damage of the vocal cords. I don't know. I don't know the physiology of zombies.
That'd be good though. You get a couple zombies who you just get you select them, you ask your DM hey, how's these ones vocal cords? And he's like, they're okay. It sounds like the next one you find.
Every morning you gotta tune your zombies. There we go.
He's reaching into their vocal cords
Yeah, I
and
was
giving them a
thinking,
tug.
Tugging is just adjusting it like blinds.
Perfect. Time to go scare some villagers.
How is this not evil? Because I'm not actually hurting them. I'm just spooking them.
It is the perfect, you can easily play that off as just the, I guess I want to say ignorant. They just have no idea what's going on, where you're just no, you can't just raise people from the dead and bring them into bars and expect people to enjoy the music you put out. And he's like, but I think that people just don't understand.
That actually could go. We don't really talk a whole lot about the Faerunian backstories, but that would go well with a character who ended up in Thay but was not really part of Thay society. They just kind of grew up there, and just nobody was gonna kill him and turn him into a zombie or teach them how to be a lich. He was just a hanger-on. It's yeah, it's totally normal. This gigantic lich dictatorship, this lictatorship
Oof.
of horrible zombie monsters all over the place is my normal.
And they're just a normal kid who grew up in that.
Maybe he was really, really cute, like a halfling or something. And the lich bosses were like, "Oh, I can't turn him into something evil.
How can I corrupt this?
Son, you've been here for 23 years. It's time that you go out in the world because, we have to go march off to war and destroy mortals. But you go do something fun and useful."
Here's a zombie and a skeleton to start you off, and a book of tomes that will teach you how to make more. So go make a name for yourself, I guess.
They grow up so fast. I have a soft spot for silly D&D and just taking anything serious in this game and making it a joke. But
Yeah, and that's fair. I've had a lot of fun with the silly campaigns, which that would have to be a part of. I mean, that's silly through and through. If you're oh, I'm the headless horseman, and I go from village to village raiding and massing a zombie army, and oh, I do the same thing. Do you? Yeah, these are my zombies. Hey, he was off. Let me go. Stick your hand in, which was just the vocal cords. But in a silly campaign that can totally play off well. It's a lot of commitment to do a silly campaign. I've done it before. After a while, it's I've really run out of direction, and everyone's like, we just want to keep being silly, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of that's over, isn't it?
That's the real hardest campaign to run is epic silly.
I think there's
You want full Spaceballs. And
Yeah.
it like burns itself out. You need to rein in more Princess Bride.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I think there's something to be said about the like 3-month campaign structure, like for those types of ideas, where I could play a 3-month long evil campaign. I could play a 3-month long silly campaign. Like that I can work with. But if we're like, yeah, we're gonna do this for the next 2 to 3 years, no, that's
No.
okay. Let's maybe just take it serious and the silly moments will happen.
Yeah.
Which is good. You know, you can have silly in serious. That's how you break it up.
Actually, it often makes the silly more silly.
Exactly. Because otherwise you're just numb to the silly.
Yeah.
You don't want to be numb
You
to
just
the
kind of
silly.
start rolling your eyes. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yep.
Threw a pie in his face.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's some cliched mechanic to the bartender. Of course. Oh, look, he's got lobster hands for no reason. This is great and hilarious, and I love it.
Lobster hands?
Yes, this guy offered you a quest, and you asked him, how many bananas does it pay? And that guy passed out, and this one's peeing in the corner. Yeah.
The aristocrats.
Maybe we just wouldn't be good at the silly campaign.
Yeah, maybe we're just really boring to old people.
Everybody like listening right now is just like, why would they pay bananas? That's not silly. That's just dumb. These people are dumb.
It's just the roulette wheel in Kevin's head spinning. He's like, what is it? And it's like half the board is bananas. It's like, oh, it's going to be bananas. I need a random thing. Bananas. Oh.
Is the stopper, like the clicker part for it, is it a banana? Yeah. How did it land on bananas again? It started on bananas, Kevin.
He's been like this since high school. I will say though, I personally could do an evil campaign like probably longer than most normal people, but I really like being
Don't
evil.
go bragging about that, man. I think you like the idea of it. As we found with when you played an evil character in a good focused campaign.
Yeah, you might be right. I probably only liked being evil because I was that contrarian element.
Right.
Right.
You would be the person who we all agree we're going to play an evil campaign, and you finally play a good character with a well-fleshed out backstory.
I'm going to stop you guys no matter the cost. Here's my 40-page backstory explaining my motivation.
Who's pretending to be evil.
It's so hard for me to pretend to be evil.
Just saying that around the fire by yourself.
You okay, bud? Just the headless horseman with a bard skeleton guy. You look kind of down. Oh, fuck you guys. I'm going to get you. You silly evil bastards.
Oh, now that is a level that I can't even fathom. Silly and evil campaign.
Silly evil kid.
I mean, everyone's just going to try and play as the Joker. I mean, I think that's really the only like example I could pin to it.
That's the
And
rule
it would be
is
so hard to
nobody
not
is
just be
allowed.
like,
What's that, Will?
You're just like, if you try and play the Joker, you explode.
no, I think anybody, we're all just going to like subconsciously just kind of keep drifting towards that behavior.
So I would practice.
And I'm talking
being
more like comic book Joker, not so much the recent movie, which was not very silly at all.
I didn't
But-
see
Or,
it. But
I mean, neither was the Heath Ledger one. So.
No.
it would be funny if each person like took on their own form of the Joker, though, and it just became a Joker campaign. Where
Oh,
it's
everyone
like,
has a different version of
right, right.
boy.
That would be so. Oh, man. That Caesar whatever from the Batman show with Adam West.
Yeah,
That was a bad show.
that's the one I'm going for. I'll have to watch the show first to really get a feel for it, but I can only assume it'll be great.
I just remember he accidentally gave someone a dehydration gun and they started dehydrating the whole town.
What?
They'd like shoot the person and they would just be a pile of dust. And like Batman had to find like super, like the opposite of it was like a squirt gun or something like that. And he just squirts this like suit covered in dust and the mayor's back. And it's like, oh, the mayor's back. Adam West.
Thank God for Batman. Is Batman a spooky character?
No.
Yes.
All right, Kevin. You win.
That was easy. All right.
Yeah. How do we make Batman?
We did this, didn't we?
Nobody likes this
Yeah.
conversation.
No, we have not done this on air, but it's been done to death a million times in the community, online, on Reddit, wherever. This conversation has been done so much, and there's never a satisfying answer.
It's like 4 different things, and you're not good at any of them. It's
Right.
like, I don't feel like Batman. I feel like a really just gimped party member.
I think he's a barbarian. No, that one's probably wrong.
No, they had a spin-off like Caveman Batman
No, they didn't. It is a comic or a show?
comic.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, I believe that.
They had like thousands of them. They have Vampire Batman too.
Okay, that sounds spooky.
Victorian Batman. There was a ton of Batmans.
I think we talked about playing as a vampire in our vampire episode.
Yes, we
Yeah.
did. And that is actually, we did mention it, but that's like the perfect way to do an evil campaign because you have
Oh, yeah.
something to do.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
true.
you would be a vampire spawn,
Right.
beholden to a vampire. And yeah, he would just give you quests and send you out in the world to do crap.
That could be fun. I would like that a lot, actually. And could actually do that long form as well. But just being evil, that's not for me. I'm just a good guy.
Lame as hell.
All right, so we've got the wizard bard, or necromancer bard.
Yeah.
I do like the Oathbreaker sorcerer, the shadow sorcerer. I think that's
Right.
really good.
Yeah.
What else can we do? What's a spooky MC?
If you reflavor a little bit Ancestral Guardian.
I was
That-
thinking
Oh.
that it does
Yeah.
have a ghost kind of vibe. Right?
Yeah, I think we briefly talked about it a little bit in outside of all this, but and that with probably I think Gloomstalker. We did a Barbarian Ranger episode recently, and it turns out that it's actually kind of decent. You can
I really
yeah.
liked it. I keep recommending it to people,
Yeah.
like for just awesome multi-classes.
Yeah, so you're the Gloomstalker, which is already the creepy one where you hide in the shadows and ambush, and if somebody has dark vision where they see you, you're actually invisible to them. Really creepy anyways. But then instead of being this like spry kind of dexterous ranger, you're this terrible hulking barbarian that can take a million hits. And then the Ancestral Guardian, they have all their abilities around like their ancestors come out and do crap. So if you're raging and you hit somebody, they get swarmed by your ancestors, and then they have disadvantage on attacks not against you and stuff like that.
I actually really like that mechanically, because if you're
Yeah.
like in the dark as like a Gloomstalker where you're already hidden from things that have dark vision and rely on dark vision, then you make it so that that thing has to attack you. It's going to have like disadvantage on everything and also disadvantage on even finding you.
Right.
So that's like mechanically very good.
Yeah.
But then also the flavor of it is, yeah, really spooky.
Right, yeah, because then with the ancestors, I get the intent is it's kind of like this abstract idea of the ancestors helping you, but just make it very, very concrete and make them like decrepit, scary ghosts and ghouls and stuff that like come out and they swarm this person's vision and gets them all distracted. And
Yeah, and I think that's a fun one to play in a totally normal campaign. That's like the first one that I'm like, yeah, that just works. Because then you kind of get your entire party who's just like, you know, yes, this guy's weird. Because I'm assuming you're going to have like some oddities to
right,
you.
yeah, you got to be that creepy, completely pale, big hulking guy with dead eyes who doesn't really talk much, doesn't blink, that sort of thing.
Right. But at the same time, it's like, well, he's only ever helped us, so I'm sure his motivations are good. But everybody we fight just screams and crumples on the ground until we kill them. Like, that's a
But
little
they're
weird.
bad guys, so it's
Right. He doesn't do it to the good guys, so that makes him good.
Right.
that'd be just like kind of a weird society. Because it is based off like kind of like a tribal idea where your ancestors are venerated throughout your tribe. And
Right.
then you get that mechanic. It's like your entire tribe's just like creepy barbarians.
I mean, there's
All your
something to
houses
it.
are made out of giant bones.
It's kind of taking like the I guess the only way to put it is like the Day of the Dead, the Mexican holiday, to an extreme of just like, what if there was an entire culture whose main focus was that idea of like honoring the dead and respecting them in a way that the dead helped you.
I was gonna say you're honoring them and then using their magic powers in Mortal Kombat.
For good. It's only against bad guys, Kevin.
Okay.
Maybe your ancestors were really into killing people, and that's
Yeah.
why they're coming back to help you.
Or maybe the ancestors don't particularly care and they just have their own kind of trust in you. Just in the same way that you respect them, they respect the people that they have, sprung forth. And
Spawned.
yeah, they're like, yeah, okay, we're going to help this one. It doesn't matter if whatever they're doing, this is for the tribe. It's to help the tribe.
Oh man,
Could be something.
Yeah.
I feel like you would really struggle to grow up as a well-adjusted person if you had the vengeful spirit of your grandpa following you around and trying to kill stuff for you.
Yeah, it's been a weird life.
Grandpa, stop.
But it could work again, and it could work as a character that's not just evil,
Right.
Which I think is kind of important if we're talking about like characters anyone wants to actually play.
Right. Yeah, and so all I could picture in terms of how this character would look is from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Sloth.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
But he goes completely invisible in the dark, and he's super stealthy. And anytime he hits you, you get swarmed with terrible, decaying ghosts and ghouls who scream at you, and eventually they can even actually hurt you.
yeah, that's really not good.
No.
It'd be like Sloth and I think it was Pride was the little kid
Yeah.
who just like in the shadows. That was his thing. He used the shadows to kill
Right.
people, and that was like super creepy. So you just combine those two together, and you've got yourself a ranger barbarian with ancestral gardens and gloomstalker.
Yep.
I like that.
Yep.
I like that a lot. It's pretty creepy. So let's see. Are there any other multi-classes that work? We haven't really talked about cleric, and I feel like cleric have like a
Like the Grave Domain.
yeah.
They've got the
That's a
bad
great
guy
one.
one, and then they've got the Death Domain, which is the bad guy one, and then the
Right.
Grave one.
Right.
So the Grave one's probably the better path for a
Non-evil.
sensible character. Yeah.
Right.
Grave with the Spore Druid.
Is
Put
that-
those two together.
Have we done Cleric Druid?
I don't know, actually. At this point, they've all blurred together.
Yeah, I say it doesn't sound familiar, but there's been a lot.
I
All
don't
right,
know.
elaborate on the Cleric Druid one, though.
Well, you've got somebody who's obsessed with death, and now they're also obsessed with mushroom spores, or just spores in general,
And their relationship to death.
and their relationship to death. It just seems very fitting, and you get that kind of like, again, the I don't want to say the spooky character, that's almost too plain, but the person who's just kind of off-putting, to say the least, where yes, most of what they're doing is keeping a natural order in things and helping the greater good, but also they just killed a guy and then imbued their body with spores and brought them back to life as a servant.
Just
So
for a
that's the
little
thing.
bit.
Yeah, so that's the thing spore druids can do. It's
Yeah.
definitely got a creepy vibe to it.
It does. And we have not done Druid Cleric, by the way. So.
Okay, well that'll definitely come
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
We'll have to dive into the mechanical viability of it.
Of the double death character.
The double death character, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the College of Whispers with the Bard. Mainly just for their one ability, and I think we talked about this in one of the Bard episodes. We've done almost all Bard classes at this point. Where they can, I'm drawing a blank on the ability name, pretty much when they kill somebody, they could steal their shadow, and then use their
Oh.
shadow to assume their form and take over them. And that's a really classic kind of scary horror movie trope of a monster, and of monster being able to look like somebody you know and trust, in the monster using that to ultimately betray you and get you.
Yeah, that's the Mantle of Whispers, is what it's called. Yeah,
Yeah.
so humanoid dies within 30 feet of you. You can magically capture its shadow using your reaction. And yeah, I mean, that definitely could be used for more nefarious means. I think
Right.
when we've talked about it, it was like, yeah, you could use it to infiltrate an area. You know, you kill a guard, you assume his
Right.
form, and then you can go wherever you need to. But there's a lot more creepiness to that.
Dude, that's
Yeah.
pretty freaking nefarious.
Right.
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I can't get through this door. Hey, you got a family. Oh.
Well, if you bring up the fact that
I'll
they have
visit your wife and kids later.
if you bring up the fact that they have a family before killing them, yes, it's very creepy. If you ignore that part, and
Oh, you're a faceless guy. Stab in the neck.
now I have your face.
Yeah, that's much easier to swallow.
Yeah.
And you could have that perfect horror movie moment where they do it, and like they slit their throat and then like morph into them and turn around. And there's this kid there, and you go like give him a wink and a shh, And they just go, and then no one believes the kid, and that sort of crap.
No one will ever believe you. As far as multi-class goes, that like really, really works well with Assassin as far as flavor's concerned.
Yes.
Oh yeah. And once again, it sounds like more of a bad guy than anything.
Yeah, just a little tiny, teeny, weeny bit.
So, I mean, there is something to taking all these ones that come across as evil, and they can be, again, a bad guy in your campaign. It doesn't always work out best to directly take a class and turn it into a like end boss fight by any means. But you can use all of the things that they get at their disposals, Mantle of Whispers, just all of the rogue assassinate abilities, and turn it into a stat block. It's definitely a good jumping off point to like take established things and turn it into something that is very hard to track down. Something is the greatest assassin in all of the land, and now your party is tasked with figuring out this group.
Right.
And maybe that little kid who saw is their only lead right now.
Right.
And, you can just body hop the entire time, because I'm sure this is like, when you finish a short or long rest, it comes back. You throw that out because you're making an evil person, whatever.
Right.
And they just keep body swapping basically, and your party has to track them down. That's fun and spooky because you don't know who it is.
Right. They could literally be one of the members of your party at one point.
Ooh. Oh, man. That would be
disappointing.
Yeah. And tough to talk about as a DM. Like, hey, man.
I don't mean permanent. Like,
okay.
And I don't mean even like killing a party member, just for a moment. I guess, like a brief period of time. You would need a group that's really good at not metagaming.
Right.
Like, because I can't really think of a fun way to do it that doesn't exclude somebody without the entire table immediately knowing what's going on. But
yeah, I mean, that's something.
So, Frank can't come today, but we're still going to play, and I'm controlling Frank's character.
Right.
Wink, wink.
Right. But I think that's something you could do with a player, is you like just, I think Matt Coville has an absolutely amazing video about doing these like long-term gotchas with a character, or like with a specific player, and you two work together to do something for the rest of the table. That's really cool. And like you work with them and say, hey, you know what? For the next 3 sessions, you're going to be the bad guy, and I want you to just play as yourself, but then we're going to have this big reveal, and, just deal with that. Maybe for like 10 minutes, you won't be able to have a character instead of the entire time, and they, you just work with them on it.
Okay.
I think it can work.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a little off. It's definitely not the norm by any means, but it can make for very memorable moments where, you just have one person who's in on it, basically.
Right.
Just like I did with you and Rin, where you and I talked about how your character is evil, they're going to do evil shit, and at some point I'm going to take that character from you, and then, you'll have to make a new character. Of course, that became part of a new campaign, so it all worked out, but it's the same idea, where we work together knowing stuff that other people didn't know. And I'm saying that in air quotes because the entire time Kevin's character was like, hey, this person's kind of evil, but you didn't know that they were an evil snake person.
You're right. I did not guess that they were a snake person in disguise.
I was thinking about it. You know what I'm super glad about? Like, we didn't have D&D Beyond back then, and I was looking into this because I was thinking about it. I'm not going to do this again because, I already kind of blew it, but you can't hide the race. So I'd have to, like, always in my head adjust everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
or you'd have to manage 2 characters. Mm-hmm. Like, you could have, like, your, human and, like, put them in there.
And then my secret backup snake character.
Right.
Yeah, who's just not in the campaign and wouldn't show up for us. Yeah.
Just to gaslight Kevin. That was one of my favorite long-term interactions with me and whatever character that was.
Lofief.
It was Lofief, right?
The bard, yeah.
Because he spent the entire next campaign as an NPC going, fucking do it.
Yeah. This is not related to anything, but that was cool to see my character from a very long running campaign show up as like a high level kind of admired NPC in a future campaign who was like kind of the quest giver and all that. That was just neat.
For sure.
Yeah.
I was glad that played out.
Yeah.
I think I'm not going to talk about it. I've said before, like, if I redid that campaign, I'd do a much better job this time. But, like, no shit. That was my second campaign I ever DM'd and my first time ever trying to do one, like, that was just personally written. And I'm sure in a year, I'll be thinking about how I could have done this one better. That's what I do. But
Means
that was a
you're
really
growing.
good time. What's that?
It means you're growing.
Yeah,
That's good. That's a
yeah,
good thing.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I am growing. I've actually somehow still gotten an inch taller from last year. That's not true. I lied. I'm sorry,
It's
guys.
never getting taller, dude.
Yeah.
Like, what, 23 now? It's not happening.
24.
Yeah, you might have that 25-year growth spurt.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Perfect.
I actually don't even know how tall you are. I think I see you like every single week, and we're sitting down now, and I cannot picture your height.
I'm
you
7
taller than
foot
me?
tall.
Okay.
You both are just so small.
I am, I think, 5'9" on a
Okay, so
good day,
we're about the
5'10".
same height.
Yeah, that's why you don't.
That's
think
why
about
I
it.
don't. Yeah, that's why I don't think about it.
Right.
Okay.
But the
And
real,
then Will's the really short guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
5'4".
oh man, I want to spread that. I want everybody to think that you're 5'4".
People who meet me, yeah, he's 5'4". It's like, that guy's like a head taller than me. How is he 5'4"?
I don't know. You're really.
You're
short.
not a doctor. You wouldn't know these things.
It'll be really confusing if we ever do go to a con and like meet people. Didn't you guys say he was like 5'4"? 5'4", 6'2". It doesn't matter.
Somewhere between those.
All right, so I think that's all the spooky multiclass that I need. You've got some great
Yeah.
options here, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Lots of spook. Lots of spook.
And when in doubt, just be a warlock. It's so easy.
It's very true. You can just be a warlock,
There's
which,
not-
okay, to be fair, is your default.
Yeah, and this is like kind of doubling down on my default. It's like, oh, you want a character? Be a warlock. Oh, you want a spooky character? Definitely be a warlock.
You say you want to go for a fighter barbarian multiclass. Have you tried playing a warlock?
Mechanically, they're similar, but the warlock's just better.
So, all right. I think with that, as long as there's no objections, we can move on to our spooky monster of the week, which is going to be the Boneclaw. But before we get into that, if you have not yet, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review on iTunes. I don't know if anywhere else even lets you review podcasts, but if it does,
I'm sure some do.
yeah,
but
go for it. But we only check iTunes, and when we see a new review, we're like, oh, look at this, and share the review, and we're all really happy about it, which doesn't happen that often. Follow us on Twitter, which is monsters_multi. And overall, share us with your friends or friend. Or if you don't have friends, share us with any stranger that you meet on the street.
Yell about us on Reddit.
Whatever it is. We appreciate it. All right, so let's move on to the Boneclaw. All right, so this week we're going to be taking a look at the Boneclaw, which is spooky in one way. The most important one being that this is what we did our episode 0 on. When we were deciding whether or not we wanted to even do a podcast, we're like, let's talk about the Boneclaw. And it turned out to be a really, really cool monster that we never got to talk about again until today, because we've got a good excuse. It's
Yes.
Halloween themed. So
And one of these days, we'll release episode 0 and
No.
feel so bad about ourselves.
I'm not going to do that.
It's bad.
I mean,
Yeah,
seriously.
I borrowed like a cheap microphone and plucked it down on the table. It sounds like we're all talking in tin cans. We didn't have a name yet. We did this whole thing where we rolled it live, which was a fine idea, but then realized it's like we know a lot, but not enough to really dig into these multiclasses live. So it's just like listen to us flip through books for 5 minutes.
Now you don't have to. You
Yeah.
can just find out about the Boneclaw.
Yeah.
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 So you guys get the best of the Boneclaw, which is a really, really cool monster that, more importantly, I don't hear much about. So it is basically what happens when a wizard fails to become a lich. So it is very often that a wizard wants to become a lich. You know, immortality and a bunch of power is a pretty big draw, but every once in a while one fails and it makes a Boneclaw in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, their soul doesn't find its way to the phylactery for whatever reason. I don't. But it
just doesn't.
Yeah, it finds the nearest person that's filled with like hate and revenge and violence, and goes into them. And the wizard who's trying to be a lich, their body transforms into this horrific skeletal creature. and then becomes a slave to whoever their soul went into.
Right. And what I love about this, beyond its stat block, which we will get into, is that it offers up one of the things that D&D does worst, honestly, which is creates a monster that is horrifying, something that can't be killed in a normal way, and you need to really probably go through a couple of fights and avoid fighting it multiple times in order to figure out what the root of this problem is. You can really reconstruct a horror movie using the Boneclaw. It is the Freddy and Jason kind of combined of the D&D world. So I absolutely love this. I still haven't been able to use one, and I've really been wanting to. I worry that you guys will just know too much about it, and it's like kind of gonna fall on deaf ears for that. But let's go through its stat block, and I think
on that note, Will and I'd be happy to like take a back seat in that session and watch the other members of our party kind of fumble through that who don't know this.
That's fair. It is a challenge rating 12 though, and as you guys are level 6, might need to wait a bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's exactly what we need. All right. So Boneclaw is alone, like its initial stats, not too intimidating. We've got an armor class of 16, HP of 127, speed of 40. Its stat block is relatively good. Strength of 19, Dex 16, Con 15, Int 13, Wisdom 15, and Charisma of 9 with some saving throws. Point is,
really decent saving throws, actually.
They are pretty
Plus
good,
7 to
actually.
Dex, Con, stuff like that. So
that is pretty good. But the first things that come out to me that are always important to keep in mind when you're playing a monster that you really want to grasp well is its skills, because it does have skills and not many monsters do. It's got +6 to perception and +7 to stealth, and that's pretty good stealth. So what do you think's going to be happening with this Boneclaw?
ambushes
And being able to see things. Okay, maybe
not
I don't really
being ambushed.
Yeah. Things you're good at, ambushing. Things you're also good at, not being ambushed. Okay. It's of course got the usual types of damage resistances as well.
For
Cold,
an undead.
yeah, for an undead. Cold, necrotic, and then any bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. So it's going to be difficult to actually hurt it. Conditioned immunities, man, it's just got a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's going to take a while to get through these. Conditioned immunities, it can't be charmed, exhausted, frightened, paralyzed, or poisoned. None of those in particular are a huge deal besides maybe paralyzed.
Charmed, paralyzed, frightened.
No,
I
all
would
of
say,
it's
yeah.
this is a mini boss shutdown. Any boss that just
Yeah.
needs to shut down those. So it's perfect for, you're not going to cheese your way out of this.
That's
Exactly,
a very
yeah.
good point. Yeah. Is hold person considered paralyzed, or is it
Yes.
just
Yes.
okay? Yeah. So that's great, because if you held this thing, it kind of just sucks.
If you hold anything, the
Right.
fight's over, man.
Right.
Or if you charmed it, it just kind of makes no sense with the lore.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So the very first thing that is important about this terrifying creature, which I don't think I mentioned how it looks yet, and that is important. It's like a 7-foot tall skeleton with like foot-long claws on its hands. So
That's like, no, they're like 2 to 3 feet long.
Yeah.
His entire
Like,
legs is
Right.
wrist and hands, basically.
yeah. His like longest finger with the claw is taller than a gnome.
yeah. So if that's not spooky enough, I don't know what is. But it has a rejuvenation ability. So while its master lives, a destroyed Boneclaw gains a new body in 1d12 hours with all of its hit points and a new body that appears within 1 mile of the Boneclaw's master. And one of the things that I love is that the master itself doesn't have to know that the Boneclaw is following it or attached to it in any way. It can,
Right.
so it gives you that option where you can use, or you can have the NPC using the Boneclaw to, I don't know, maybe smite its enemies
Yeah,
in
get
some way, shape, or
revenge,
form.
Yeah.
But you can also use it to just terrorize a village without somebody knowing.
Right, saying it could feed off of its master's subconscious desires. You might have somebody where they're filled with a lot of hate and anger, but are really choosing to not act on it and trying to have a better outlook in life or improve something or whatever, and this Boneclaw attaches to him. And now all these people that this person has all this hate for turns up dead in these terribly brutal ways.
Right.
And like they're not even aware of it themselves.
Right. And so like when you have an NPC who is like outwardly evil, it almost becomes simpler to track down because it's like, oh, there's a Boneclaw. All right, let's research the Boneclaw. Okay, so it attaches to things with hate. Who's the most hateful person in the village? And I'm oversimplifying it for the sake of being concise, but that almost makes it like very straightforward compared to figuring out what a Boneclaw is, and then it's like, okay, well, who is it? It's like, well, they don't even know.
Right.
You know, like, how are you supposed to track that down? You have to like really get the corkboard on the wall and put up the red pins with all of the victims and tie them all together and be like, who's at the center of this?
Right.
And it becomes like a conspiracy theory almost.
Yeah. And you could also really send the party on kind of like a red herring tangent with this, because you could really frame it to make it seem like someone's a werewolf, where you're having these people show up dead and just like mutilated, torn apart, which the Boneclaw does, and they're all connected back to this one person who is swearing up and down they have absolutely no memory of it. I guarantee you a lot of parties, if they don't know about the Boneclaw, they're going to jump to, oh, they must be a werewolf,
right?
And doing this not aware of it. And then you come the whole thing of, all right, how do we cure them of lycanthropy, or do we just kill them or whatever? And it's just completely wrong.
And I think that's really good for a Halloween themed one shot, which this is absolutely perfect for, or maybe a mini arc, however you want to play it out. Because if you think about, I'm going to run a Halloween one shot, if somebody says, yeah, the main thing is werewolves, that's like kind of cliche.
Yeah.
Whereas the Boneclaw, people aren't going to know about that. And it's nice to be able to throw something at your party that they're like, whoa, like I never heard of that. And also that's terrifying. So there's a ton more stat block here. Yeah. The next thing being shadow stealth. While in dim light or darkness, the Boneclaw can take the hide action as a bonus action. I always love when bonus actions get used on monsters because they're very often forgotten. And that one is very useful. The only thing that can match it is the rogue and its ability to hide as a bonus action. But against players, I mean, that makes this thing, once again, very good at ambushing. And it lets you set up something that lasts for much longer than the final conflict with the Boneclaw. Something where they can easily pop out of the shadows, make an attack at the party, maybe even like quickly down somebody if we're talking about like a relatively weak party. The wizard in back, who the Boneclaw just pops out, takes a huge swipe at, does tons of damage, and then goes back into the shadows and just disappears. It lets you ambush better than just about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, which does bring to its actual actions. So it's got two main ones. It's Piercing Claw, which it can get multi-attack with, and it's Shadow Jump. So the Piercing Claw is pretty standard stuff of weapon melee attack +8 with a reach of 15 feet, which I think actually just goes to show its size.
Yeah.
It really is huge. It's large to start here. So that's a very, very large reach.
15 feet, 40 feet of movement, large. It's not going to have much trouble getting your party.
Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So it's got 15-foot reach, +8 to hit, 3d10 +4 piercing damage. And if the target is a creature, the Boneclaw can pull the target up to 10 feet towards itself. The target is automatically grappled. And the Boneclaw has 2 claws. While a claw grapples a target, the claw can only attack that one target. So it's very good at, it can go up to 2, but just that single focus of grabbing one and then just destroying that one person with, now they're grappled, they can't get away, and just keeps laying into them.
Right.
So if that's not enough, it does have a Shadow Jump as well, which just adds on to this ambush idea. If the Boneclaw is in dim light or darkness, each creature of the Boneclaw's choice within 5 feet of it must succeed on a DC 14 con saving throw or take 5d12 necrotic damage.
+2. 5d12 +2, Jared.
Thank you.
Don't forget that.
That is important. I guess that's going off of its wisdom. Why not? The Boneclaw then magically teleports up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space it can see, and it can bring one creature it's grappling teleporting that creature to an unoccupied space it can see within 5 feet of its destination. The destination spaces of this teleportation must be in dim light or darkness. So, as you mentioned just a second ago, with the 15-foot reach and a speed of 40, you're not getting away from this thing. It can run a lot faster than you. It can reach out a lot further than you. And then it can just teleport 60 feet away from the rest of your group to say, nope, this one's mine.
Which is obnoxious as hell.
It really is. And dealing, again, 5d12 necrotic damage to everyone nearby. And I guess that's before it leaves. Yeah, because it says it does the damage, then it magically teleports.
I kind of see it poofs away in this necrotic wave.
So it's basically going to come in, attack one, use its piercing claw on somebody, grapple them, making a second attack on them. If that person doesn't get out that next turn, then it's going to shadow jump 60 feet away. And I mean, we're talking, if all of these hit, it's going to be 6d10 plus 8 and then 5d12 plus 2 damage over 2 turns. That's a lot.
Yeah, now you're completely separated from the rest of your party.
And now you're completely separated. It's...
Yeah, like you could be in complete darkness.
And that's theoretically...
of course, could see him.
And that's theoretically also without factoring his movement. In a turn, it could give you 75 points of damage. Teleport 60 feet away and then run 40.
Yeah. No, you're totally right.
Yeah.
Which is, I'll say this. This is one of those things where you can be a really annoying DM. And if you have some player who really likes their wizard, and you're like, you know what? I don't like that wizard. You can just in an unfair way end their character, and the party is just going to be sitting there wondering if they're going to come back next week. So you have to be a little careful with that.
Which, no, definitely. I think this comes up in the same vein as the Banderhob that we talked about forever ago, where it almost seems like it's structured more towards grabbing an NPC and getting out of there, or killing an NPC very quickly, or however you want to phrase it or structure it, where you're with an NPC who's helping you, who's guiding you through this, and then the Boneclaw comes in, grabs them through the shadows, pulls them 100 feet away, and then just gets the hell out of there.
So this is perfect for one of the scenarios of how to use the Boneclaw. If the party knows that these people are being targeted and they do eventually find the pattern, they can pick a person, say, you know what, instead of figuring out who's at the center of this, we're going to find the next likeliest target and we're going to follow them, protect them. You can be like, oh, you're going to get murdered. You know how the party's going to do that.
Right.
They're immediately going to go to the baker and be like, you're going to get brutally murdered in 4 seconds if you don't do everything we say. And then you have the DM is like, what? No, my family. We have to get out of the town. Quick, help me pack the sourdough. And you're like, no. We want to use you as bait. Bait, but I've got 3 young children. No, it's fine. We're like a level 7 party. It couldn't be that bad. And then at night, you've got, the wham bam combo. After the surprise round, just tears the baker in half and just takes his upper torso and just gone.
Right.
And your party runs after it. The Boneclaw's gone.
Right.
And they just find the plump top half of the mutilated baker. And that's not even a combat. That's just hey, you're screwing with some really scary stuff.
Right. It's a tone setter.
Yeah.
Which is important with these things where I can think of an infinite amount of ways to use that almost exact scenario. Even if it's just the first night that the PCs are there and they're out drinking, they're having a good time. And then just out of the shadows as they're walking home, they just see a person on the streets basically have that happen to them, where the Boneclaw comes out, rips their torso, does, if they're all around each other, 5d12 plus 2 necrotic damage to them as it boofs out. And now the party's like, what just happened? As they have the entrails spilling out of this person. It's just oh my God. That's again, it's a tone setter where it's hey guys, things are going to be a little fucked up the next couple of weeks as you figure this out.
Yeah, and then the extra scary part, the next time you have this happen to them, let the PCs beat up on it and maybe even kill it, and then it just comes back the next day.
Yeah.
And does it again.
Right. And that's, I think, one of the somewhat tough things is we kind of experienced this the other week when I had you guys all fight the gibbering mouther that I kind of reworked a little bit, and it basically came back every time you killed it. Where, to an extent, having the same fight over and over again does lose a bit of its intensity. So you need to find ways to change it up. And I think that's what can be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
It needs to feel like a nuisance because, it's challenge rating 12. It's going to be difficult unless you're like, yeah, I'm going to throw it against my party of level 12s, which would make you the dumbest person in the world.
I mean, that's kind of what you did with Gibbering Mouth. Or like it was like a constant, like, okay, we got to nuke it again.
Right. But then it progressed and things did happen.
It had that end goal.
Right. I mean, that one was specifically just supposed to be a dungeon nuisance to, be a problem when you guys came into a new area. But I think
kind of like a penalty of us waiting around somewhere, taking extra time to search something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't use the Boneclaw like that. It's going to be a once a day encounter. But I think that there is definitely something to, if it's at the point where, let's say you've got a party of level 9s, where this thing's going to be tough, but it's not going to be the end of the world by any means. You definitely want to try and find a way to ramp it up for the final fight, or make the fights in between, somewhat interesting. The first night, it absolutely obliterates the person you're protecting. Great. The second night, you're a little bit more prepared, so it's now about protecting this NPC. Inevitably, they're probably going to fail, and it's going to get away before you can fully kill it, or maybe you do kill it and it protects the NPC, but it's going to be back tomorrow. And now you've got to think about that again, where it's like, okay, what's the most defensible place? Well, we need to be, in an area of like complete and total light, because I feel like that's immediately where the PCs are going to go. If they do any research, it's like, okay, it comes out of the shadows every time. Well, let's make an entirely bright place. Well, now you got to, as a DM, figure out a way to like kill the lights in some way. And it comes back again. And it's just this matter of like, you got to ramp up the fights to keep it interesting so it doesn't feel like they've figured out everything, but also have it satisfying when they do figure everything out and totally stop it.
This would be a great, if you got your thinking cap players in the room, this would be a great opportunity for them to use something like Daylight, which is a very underused spell. It's basically the opposite of darkness. You do that in a room, just out of nowhere when the Boneclaw's attacking. The Boneclaw's, he's going to be like, what the hell happened?
Right.
And that's a great way to kill it.
Definitely. And it's still, it's only going to kill it for that 1d10 hours.
Exactly.
But you're totally right. It's a great way to get it, to keep it from escaping. So maybe it's, grabbing an NPC and actually taking it somewhere before killing it. Great. You cast the Daylight spell and it's locked down to this area. It can't magically teleport out, or it has to run first, whatever. It's going to be a lot more difficult.
Right.
So you definitely have opportunities for your players to learn the way that this thing is, fighting you to then fight against it instead. The first night, though, is going to be a massacre. I think that's the important part, is you got to set that tone of just like, they have no idea what's coming and they're going to get totally blindsided.
Yeah.
The poor baker.
Yeah. Let him roll initiative. Go for it. Sure. Fine. Because what its last thing is that we didn't even get to is its Deadly Reach, which is a reaction, and a really great one that I like a lot. It's in response to a visible enemy moving into its reach. The Boneclaw makes one claw attack against that enemy. If the attacks hit, the Boneclaw can make a second claw attack against the target.
Which is just a nuts reaction.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely absurd. So even if the very first night, it grabs the NPC and like tears into him, and you see this person get more or less eviscerated, but like they're slightly hanging on, and your PCs, of course, are going to spring into action. One of them is going to sprint forward, and what does this thing do? 6d10 plus 8 piercing damage.
Yeah, and grappling.
And then I think it can choose one creature it's grappling to teleport away from.
Right.
So then next turn, it's going to do that. It's going to teleport away with the NPC, probably killing it in the process, to be honest. So it leaves behind half of it, leaves the person who went running in, thinking that they were going to be the hero, kinda almost dead. I mean, that's a lot of damage in 2 turns. So I love that. I think there's so much you can do with it to just keep setting that tone.
Yeah, no, this was going back to like the meta of this. I was always depressed by like how crappy that episode ended up, because this is probably my favorite mechanical enemy. I don't think there is a single other enemy in any of the monster books that is quite as cool to me in just pure mechanics.
Right.
And then the flavor just goes with it perfectly. Like, I can see other people having preferences, but this is probably my favorite enemy.
Well, I just think it does a great job of really using each of its abilities to just do something. There's not one that I look at and just go, well, what's the point of that?
Exactly.
Every single one, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's great. That's amazing. I want
Right.
that.
It's actually kind of like half of our over-designed PCs that are just like stat max to use every single turn of their action to do
Right.
these great combos. And it's now that's in an enemy form. It's like,
Right.
damn, that's going to be a really rough time.
Right. And then we should talk about how to actually dispatch the Boneclaw, because if it rejuvenates every time you kill it, the easy way is to kill its master once you find out who it is. But I feel like that's too straightforward. You're really not doing this whole thing justice if you just make it like a clearly evil person who's been doing terrible things anyways and just needs to die.
Right.
I think it's the encounter, this session, whatever, will be so much better if its master is that type of person who is not aware of the Boneclaw's presence. And even though they're filled with a lot of anger and hatred, did not actually want to hurt anybody.
I think
Because then what do you do about it?
Right. I think I remember in our original episode 0, our example was a kid who was like bullied a lot, and they like
Right.
had a lot of resentment for their bullies. Where it's like, yes, their heart is filled with hatred, but that's also a little kid
Right.
who is inadvertently having people around the town murdered. So it definitely offers a bit of a moral quandary.
Right. Because it doesn't really give detailed instructions of how to make this Boneclaw go away without killing its master.
Well, it
There
doesn't.
is one.
It gives you the example of how to do it as soon as they stop being a dick.
It does say that if its master finds redemption or sincerely turns away from the path of evil, the Boneclaw is permanently destroyed.
Okay, right. I forgot
But
about
that's
that. Yeah.
a little tough to quantify. To say,
Right.
yes, you have 100% turned away from evil.
Right. And let's say whatever you quantify it or you figure out a way to turn this person around. It's like, how long is that going to take? How many people are going to die in the meantime as you try and redeem this one individual?
Right.
When does it no longer become worth it?
Right.
Like, when is it, all right, I mean, this person's not doing this on purpose, but keeping them alive is killing somebody else every single night.
I think that's when you have the simple example of the kid. The kid's going to be very easy to turn away from evil.
Agreed.
Like,
yeah.
he may hate the kids who bullied him or the people that were mean to him.
Right. And so you should
Maybe
explain,
he
like,
hates his dad or something like
Right.
that. And then he sees his dad get killed. And like, if you can help him connect the dots, that's quest over.
right. If
Right.
you're like, no, it's not that Johnny's mean to you and hates your buck teeth. It's that his parents got divorced and he doesn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
You know,
just
and
gotta
then
make
he
him
starts to understand, and then there's progress, you know, and that's easy enough to do. It is going to be a lot harder if it's the the old bitter man who
Town drunk who's trying to get out of bar tabs.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of true. I mean there's one aspect where it is not an inherently evil person or the idea of somebody who's like started to harness the evil intentionally, but maybe they're completely unaware of it until your party makes them aware of it. Until they're the ones who spill the beans and say, "Hey, town drunk," you go up to him and say, "Hey, this Boneclaw thing is killing stuff because of you, because of the hatred in your heart." And it's like, "Whoa. Awesome.
Then he sobers
I
up,
can use that."
makes amends with his wife, and Johnny stops bullying the kid.
Yeah, okay, that's probably not going to happen.
Turns out there was like 4 Boneclaws.
The Boneclaws are killing the other Boneclaws, and they're just coming back every 10 hours. Yeah, okay, that's probably not going to be
The
a
accidental Boneclaw town.
thing. It's like 5 people and just 5 Boneclaws going after each other.
I like that.
But no, I mean, I think, it's something that you can make a little bit more. You can make it as difficult as your party wants to deal with. If you want it to be a really quick one-shot, yes, it's the kid who was, he's troubled for whatever reason, and it's very easy to bring them over to the side of good.
Right.
Or
Or the overtly evil adult who's doing
Exactly.
this on purpose.
Right. Who knows and likes it. Or again, in the middle ground where they don't know, but then they find out and they're like kind of torn on it. And they're like, well, I mean, it hasn't hurt me. So you're telling me I'm going to be safe this entire time and everybody around me dies? Well, that's fine. That's their problem, you know? And like, yes, it's fucked up. I think that's pretty easy to agree on because we're all sane people. Will, why are you giving me that look?
I'm just, it's like, the people I don't like are dying. This has no effect on me. It'll never come back to me except for what you know. Now I'm starting to dislike you.
Right.
Please leave my office.
There's a lot of ways you can play it, to be completely honest. And I think that opens up a lot of doors.
And yeah, I mean, like, I think that's why I like the kid one the best because, like, if your party caves in some 10-year-old skull, you're gonna have to like stop the session after that. It's like, let's talk about alignment changes.
It's kind of a tough one, isn't it?
The Boneclaw's now following you.
It's not how it works, luckily. Once you kill it, you're good.
Normally I just disappear, but that was so friggin' edgy. I just gotta stick around.
You guys are cool as shit.
You got any other kids you don't like? Dibs on the next one.
It does say that the Boneclaws are cackling slayers. They specifically do delight in murder, and nothing pleases them more than causing horrific pain. So it isn't just like this Boneclaw is like just kind of mindlessly doing these things. It specifically wants to cave in 10-year-old skulls.
Yeah, as a walking torture demon, that's part of the reason I like it. It's like one of the edgier things in the book.
Yeah, it's a lot of layers of edge.
So yeah, also be careful with that. Like, this is a really easy way to just get on a like child murder tangent. And even I'm like, no, let's just
right. Let's tone it down a little.
Let's Skyrim that one. For some reason, they're immune.
Right.
You can kill their parents all you want, though.
But it would be the call to action. I could see that where the Boneclaw has been killing adults, and everyone's like, "Hey, that's really bad." But then it kills a kid, and they're like, "We need to get adventurers."
All right, now we have to take this seriously.
Right.
Someone broke the pact.
Sorry, it's the kid who's been stealing bread.
So let's go back to the baker.
Yeah, say it back to the baker. He really likes his sourdough.
No, I really like this guy.
Yeah. Boneclaw it was our episode 0, but it's number 1 in our hearts. Not because of the child murder stuff. It's because the possibility of the child murder stuff.
And the mechanics, man. It's the mechanics.
And the mechanics. Not to bring it back too much to Matt Covell, who does a lot of great videos that I'm sure most people here know about. He recently did one that you sent to me around the idea of taking a boss and giving it like meaningful bonus actions, reactions, and just like round tracker things. And I think this is a D&D boss that I will put in air quotes here, that very much fits that idea of like, there's not a wasted movement with this thing.
Right.
And I think you could very, very easily add in a, at the beginning of the first turn, it does this thing. And the beginning of the second turn, it does this thing. And like, just really stack up all the awfulness that it brings to the table.
This is totally a tangent, but if you really wanted to spice this fight up, you could do the normal stat tweaks and then go ahead and just like look at the Lich stat block and give it nerf versions of that.
I can see it.
And say, it got these spells. It didn't get disintegrate,
Yeah.
Just give it a few spells if it's getting nuked by your party too often.
That's a good point. And I think that's a good way, as I mentioned earlier, of ramping up the fights. Where the first one, you throw a normal, perfectly layered out Boneclaw exactly as it is, and you see how the fight goes. If your party gets like almost TPK'd, then you find some excuse to have it bolt out of there. But if they absolutely destroy it, which there's a good chance they will, then you can start adding those things in where you can say, okay, what spells are going to make this a real bitch to fight? Maybe it gets a hold person.
Darkness, web, perfect stuff.
Yeah. And do you want to be restrained around this thing?
Nope.
No. With advantage on each of its attacks? No, you don't. You really don't. Do you want it to haste itself?
Just stop.
Hold person would be a real scary one.
Yeah. Because, it's already like, it can basically hold your entire party. At some point, it's getting there. Where if you give it a hold person of, I don't know, 3rd or 4th level, just hold everyone, the people who succeeded, great, I'm going to attack you, grapple, teleport. Like, it's just a shutdown.
Don't do that. Just give it web, man. Just give it web.
No, and I think that's something to look at.
That's spookier, anyways.
I definitely don't know lich spells off the top of my head, but I think they've got plenty that you can cherry pick from. It's good. Love it. Boneclaw. You guys could probably fight one in a little bit of time here. It'll be a good time.
It's gonna be great.
All right.
Cool.
That's all I've got. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Nope.
All right. I hope you enjoyed our spooky episode. Once again, subscribe to us. Enjoy your Halloween. And that's it. That's everything.
Thanks for listening. Bleh.
Blah.
Bleh.
Next time on Monsters Multiclass.
Join us next week as we discuss the Monk Paladin and the Barghest from
Hold on, my phone's not unlocking.
oh boy, we're losing listeners by the
Bolo's
second.
Guide to Monsters.
Perfect. All right. And if you're still here, just remember we love you. And maybe go listen to some of our old episodes, like the Christmas one. It's coming up soon. Or the Nagpa. Thanksgiving's right around the corner.
Oh.